This is the end table of plan and procedure step 8. We're going to attach the D-ring into the end table here. And the first step is to measure our distance between the two rabbets on the sides, okay? But we want to make sure we do that measurement close to the back where we've got this all glued and it's solid. So I'm going to measure across here. Mine happens to be 15 and 1/16. Yours may be a little different, just depending on how everything comes out. 15 and 1/16. I'm going to write that measurement on my D-ring. Just doesn't really matter where. 15 and 1/16. Now we're going to go over to the panel saw and we're going to start trimming this up so that it's going to fit. All right, I'm here at the panel saw. I've got the D-ring. I wrote down on here that it's 15 and 1/16 that is our goal, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to trim one edge of the side that has the end grain showing. Now notice, right here, this is end grain. So we're going to trim off this edge right here just a little bit. We're going to trim off to 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. We're going to do it on the panel saw. So we're going to slide this in here. Let me get a little bit of a close-up here. Okay, I'm going to slide this in here on these rollers, and I'm going to bring down the saw here, and notice, I don't know if we can get a better look here, there is a red line right here, and that's where the blade's going to cut. So we bring this down, and we want that red line just covering just a little bit of the board so that we trim off just a little bit. Then we need to clamp it in place, and I've got some spring clamps here. If you're at Mountain Crest, you'll just use a different, whatever the clamping system that is already in place on the panel saw. I'm going to use both spring clamps. I'm going to clamp it in a couple spots here so it doesn't want to move. It's down tight against these rollers. Make sure it's down tight, and then we can make this cut. All right, so just push the start button here. And then that just trimmed off a tiny little bit. Okay, and now we're ready to go to the next step. All right, step 4 is to trim the D-ring to the distance that we measured, which was the 15 and 1/16 in my case. This is the edge right here that we trimmed off on the panel saw, so that's going to go against the fence. Okay, it was 15 and a half. I'm down to just a little bit over 15 and a quarter at this point. So I'll set this over to 15 and 1/16. And then we're going to run it through just like any other board. Double check your blade heights. And then you're just going to push it through. You don't need to worry about a push stick. You're just going to make sure you push it through on this side. Okay? Here we go. Okay, so now this should be exactly 15 and 1/16. Looks great. We're ready to go to the next step and make sure that we're going to be able to fit this in like it needs to. All right, so now that we've got this trimmed on the table saw, we need to make sure that it fits the way it needs to fit. And remember, we measured across this distance 15 and 1/16. Excuse me, 15 and 1/16. So that's what we cut it at. And the D-ring should fit right in between those two rabbets, which that edge does. You may want to flip it around as well. Okay, double check the other edge, and that looks good. Now right now it's not going to fit in between our legs. We've got to do some notching, okay? And so the next step is to mark where the notches need to be. Here's how you do it. You're going to set the I'll spin it right here so you can see better. Okay, we're gonna set the D-ring in here. And I'm gonna mark right where the edge of the table is, or edge of the leg is, and do the same on this side, okay? And then I'm going to turn, put it in this direction, a bit of an angle. I'm gonna mark the other edge of the leg, and I'll twist and go this way on this side. I'll mark the other edge of this leg, okay? And while I'm at it, I'll need to do this end as well, so I can mark this one. And I could have done this before. Okay, make sure this is in the back all the way. Mark there. And then I'm going to do the same. I'll twist it around again to the front edge, right here. And the front edge right here. Make sure that the table's in tight on these outside edges. Okay, so now I've got these marks, and now I just need to draw and take those so that they meet each other. And to do that, we're going to use a square. Okay, so I've got a square here, and I'm just gonna take and draw that line over and move the square this way, draw the line over. So that's what we gotta notch out. We've gotta cut this little area out. Do this edge, this notch here. Same on all four corners. All right, and this one. The back ones are smaller notches than the front ones. Okay, the front ones are a little bit bigger. All right, so there's my notches. Now we're gonna go over to the bandsaw, and we're gonna cut these out. And notice on your paper there's a graphic, and it shows you what these should look just like this before you go to the bandsaw. All right, so we're at the bandsaw. We need to make a couple adjustments before we start. We need to make sure that the guard is down close, about 1/8 of an inch above the material. So I'm gonna set it right here. Twist the knob, pull it down, so it's just a little bit above. Tighten your knob back up. Okay, now, we're gonna run into some problems here in that the throat of this is not quite wide enough to do our cuts, all the cuts that we need to do. So we're gonna do the cuts that we can, then we're gonna have to do some marking on the opposite side once we have the cuts on the side that we've marked, and then we'll come back and finish our cuts. Now when you make the cuts, remember, we're trying to cut out this area right here. That's what we want to get rid of. So our actual cut, we want to try to leave this line just a little bit. Don't cut too much extra out. We want to make sure we're just barely touching that line with the blade. So here we go. Okay, we're going to go slowly in. As far as I'm supposed, and then back out. So now I've got that cut that's just right to that red line. Now I can't get this one in there because it's in the way. So I'm going to just twist. I'll go to the next one here that I can get in. In, back out. Same thing, I can't get that one in, so I got to go to the next one here. In, back out. Twist, got to go to the last one, the fourth one. All right. Now, we need to go and do some drawing on the back side to finish this out so we can go and cut. We're going to go do that. All right, now that I've got these cut, you can see the cut mark right there. And if I flip this over, there's my line, there's my cut mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the square and I'm going to draw the end of the cut because I stopped right at the line. So now I can just take the end of that cut and I can draw that line so I can know where to cut on the saw. I'll do that on all the 4 corners. So line your square up with the end of the cut, draw that line, twist, line your square up again, draw that, twist it, end of the cut, draw it, twist it, and then the end of the cut, draw it. And then now we've got the 4 lines again on the back side that we'll be able to cut on the saw right over here. All right, we're ready to finish our cuts. Turn on the saw. Go in, and then that notch comes out. Do the remaining 3 notches as well. Remember to keep your hands back. Okay, so now we have it notched in the 4 corners, and we need to go see if it'll fit now. All right, so now I'm ready to try to fit this, and really you just gotta put it in here. Remember that this edge here, the front edge, has a little deeper cuts than the back edge. So I'm just trying to put them in here. But I got some binding going on, and I can see that I didn't cut quite enough off right here and possibly right here. So I'm gonna have to go trim up. You're probably gonna have to do a number of trials and errors until you get it to fit. You may have to just go keep trimming just a tiny little bit off, figure out which side you need to trim off more until you get it to fit. I'm gonna go do that, and then we'll see if we can get it to fit. All right, so I've got the D-ring fitting now. I've had to make some just minor adjustments on my cuts. Everything's fitting nice and tight. So now we're ready to glue this in, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna glue along all the rabbets, and then I'm gonna use C-clamps to clamp it into place while it dries. Okay, so I've got glue here. I'm gonna place it into this, kind of on the edge of this rabbet. Notice that I'm not putting it right down in the corner, but I will put some on the bottom as well, okay? And then I'm spreading it out. And it's okay if it gets on your leg a little bit right there, because you're gonna be gluing. That will glue it in as well. Okay, spread it out a little bit again. And then on this rabbit as well. Okay, so we're looking pretty good on the glue here. Now I need to just put the D-ring back in and clamp it in place. Now you want to be a little bit careful with the C-clamps here in this case, because if you go too tight, you can leave marks on the edges of your board. Okay, just snug it up so the glue starts coming out. Make sure you keep it down tight in the joints. Okay, you'll need probably 5 C-clamps. Try to get that back on. Okay, 4 or 5 C-clamps will work. I actually need to go get one more, but that's looking pretty good. I need to put one more here, and then we'll just give it time to dry for the 30 minutes, and we'll be ready to go on to the next process.